Hi, everybody. Thank you very much for joining us for the final session of the day. This is the live Q&A session with some colleagues of mine from around the school. Just a bit of an introduction. If you weren't here this morning, my name is Liam. I'm the Associate Director for the MBA Recruitment and Admissions team, and I will be emceeing, moderating, facilitating this panel for the next hour. In a few seconds, I'll turn my camera off. I'll ask my colleagues to turn their cameras on and introduce themselves, but just before that, there's no presentation in this session, folks, so it is just a live Q&A session. If you can take as little time as you want, really, to send those questions through, we'll be ready to go as soon as those introductions are done. So don't feel as though you have to wait until the end of the session to get the questions in. The entire session is the Q&A. So start sending those questions through now. If there are things that you've had on your mind throughout the day in the other sessions that haven't quite been answered, then send them through to the Q&A box. We'll get to them just as soon as those introductions are done. So if I can ask my colleagues, please, to join me and turn their cameras on. Guys, we're really fortunate to be joined by three of my favorite people from around the school, representation and representatives from the admissions and recruitment side, from the program side, and from student fees and funding. So I'll be quiet for a few seconds, and Charlene, if you'd like to start the introductions off for me, please.
Hi everyone, and welcome. Thank you for joining us today. As Liam mentioned, my name is Charlene New. I am the MBA and Admissions and Operations Manager here at the Business School. I've been here for quite a lengthy time, so good knowledge and history of the school. However, I'm also born in Oxford, so I can talk for hours when it comes to kind of living in Oxford itself. So more than happy to answer them type of questions as well, if any of you have them. So thank you and welcome.
Hi, so I'm Rachel Keeney. I'm the head of MBA academic delivery. I work on the programs team and lead the team that do everything that is for credit on the MBA program. Similarly to Charlene, I've been here quite a few years now, so not quite as long, but approaching 8 years in January, and was also born in Oxford in the hospital. So we'll contribute if you do have general Oxford questions as well, but mostly here to talk about the academic side of the program.
Hello everybody, I'm Frankie Harris and I'm the Student Funding Manager at SBS. Unlike my colleagues, I wasn't born in Oxford, so I'm not sure I can answer as many of the questions as they can. But yeah, I look after student funding and scholarships across the school for degree-bearing programs, and obviously one of the biggest areas is MBA scholarships. So I'm looking forward to answering your questions.
Thank you, everyone. Just a general note to the audience, please, and I'll turn my camera off in a moment so you don't have to look at my face any longer than you already have today. There'll be some questions that I'm sure you'll have that are quite personal to your set of circumstances, about your profile, about your professional experience, and we'll try and get to as many of those as we can, but we are going to try and focus on the questions that will benefit the group as a whole. So forgive me in advance if we don't quite get to your very specific question. Please reach out to us through any form, LinkedIn, email address, phone call if you want to the team, and we can address those questions and we can have a conversation about your individual set of circumstances. But for today, we'll try and get the more general questions answered. And one person we haven't really introduced, and there's no need to turn your camera on, Sarah Lou, but in the background, as always, throughout today, Sarah Lou was working on the questions that I don't get to out loud with the panel today. So send them through. We'll get to as many of them as we can. And without further ado, let me turn my camera off and you can focus on these three amazing people. And we've got a question that starts off a little bit, maybe, Charlene, for you, if you don't mind. And it's around the college choice. In my session earlier this morning, we were talking about being on the MBA, you also get to be a member of the college and you can choose what college you would like. Can you shed some light, please, on what happens if you don't get your first pick? Do you have a backup? Do you have a second choice? And how is that decided, please?
Yeah, absolutely. So for those of you that attended the previous session with our alumni panel, it was obviously quite obvious and clear from what they've said that they will all tell you that their college was the best college. That's where they had their experience. And some of them went into a little bit about how they kind of chose their college, whether it's regarding distance from the school. I personally just want to say that Oxford's not a very huge place, and although some mentioned that certain colleges seemed a bit too far, so they didn't really go to their college and experience, nothing is too far in Oxford. You jump on a bike, you walk through, you know, lovely buildings, the views are amazing. So just to kind of put that out there as well, that no college is really far from the business school itself. In terms of choosing a college, once you are admitted to the program, you will be given access where you have a list of colleges that you can choose from. Unfortunately, you do only get one preference. If for any reason that college are unable to admit you, and that does happen, and it might not necessarily mean there's anything wrong with your application. Obviously, you've been admitted to the program. We think you're amazing, but colleges sometimes do look for different things. If you're unfortunate, if you're not fortunate enough to be admitted at your first college, then your application is kind of sent to a pool where a college is then allocated. You're allocated to a college. In the past, you know, some people do get a bit concerned with that, but I can say that, you know, if you don't, we have people that, you know, then go on and be admitted to Christchurch or Magdalen or Merton, and these are the colleges that everyone thinks they need to be a part of. But I can tell you that there's lots of amazing colleges, so I don't think that anyone would be disheartened about which college you actually end up in. They're all pretty amazing, pretty fantastic. They will all offer you the kind of social aspect and the networking aspect of what the university as a whole can offer you. So I know a lot of students that spend a lot of time. I've seen spreadsheets, breakdowns of different colleges and like points to different ones which students have gone through. I personally don't think you need to spend that much time or that much commitment. The team and me personally as well are always happy to have the conversations with students about what colleges they may kind of suit better, as you heard earlier, maybe particular sports or activities, you know, the type of accommodation maybe, because obviously some colleges may only take or have a college accommodation availability, sorry, for single rooms. So if you're coming with families, you know, there may be particular colleges that actually would be better suited for you and your family. So there's lots of different things to look at, but I wouldn't get so bogged down, because as again Liam in his session this morning, all of your teaching will be at the business school. So the college is there kind of for your social welfare, networking opportunities, and I think it's really good to kind of make the most of that while you're here. So yes, if you don't get into your first preference, please don't be disheartened, because you will still have an amazing year and experience at any college you attend.
Great, thank you, Charlene. Really, really good answer. Frankie, if we can come to you for the next one, please. It's more of a general question, but a good one to get started on the funding side. Maybe, is there any advice you would be able to offer to candidates applying to multiple scholarships at the same time?
So my advice was to make sure that you apply to one of the MBA mission stages before stage 3, because that way it gives you the most opportunity. So mainly because all of the university scholarships, their deadline is in January. That means you'll be considered for SBS scholarships and for university scholarships. So that gives you the biggest chance to get some funding. For if you're applying for multiple scholarships, I mean, you need to look, if they require an additional application and you need to write a scholarship statement, you really look at the eligibility and what the committee will be looking for. So really read the web pages. You don't want to be using the same stuff in each scholarship application, because they're looking for different types of attributes or skills. So really do make sure you tailor your application, your scholarship application, to that specific scheme. That would be my advice, and really try and promote yourself. Don't be afraid to kind of talk about your good points or what you've done before, or anything that you think is relevant. Do highlight that, because although the scholarship committee will be able to see your MBA application, it's really your essay that they will look at and focus on and think about, whether you're the right recipient of that scholarship. So that would be my advice.
Great, thank you, Frankie. Rachel, don't think you're getting away without any questions. One for you, if you don't mind. Someone has asked about the process behind choosing the electives, and at what point of the year does that normally happen, please?
Yeah, so good question. This is one that's often asked by people just as they turn up. So you're ahead of the game already. So we run electives in both our second and our third terms. That's Hilary and Trinity term. In Hilary, you have a choice of 3 electives. They're seen as Core Plus, which builds on your core teaching. You'll be opting for them in a preference survey that's done before Christmas break, because when you come back in January, that's when you'll be starting your electives. The main electives that take place in the Trinity term. That term doesn't have core teaching and it's just electives. So that's when you're really kind of starting to personalize the MBA program and doing the subjects you're really interested in that are going to help you in the future with your careers. For that, we actually have a purpose-built system called the Student Option System, or SOS for short. This is a bidding process. So you're allocated automatically 100 points and you bid on 5 electives. So it's up to you to kind of show your emphasis or interest in certain electives by the amount of bidding points that you put in. We make sure that you are able to see course outlines, details, the way that they're going to be assessed, so that you can get a good idea of all of the electives on offer and make a good choice. What we're also doing this year for the first, well, reintroducing, is the idea of asking faculty to do short videos in addition to your course outline, if they would like to. So that will give you an idea of who is actually teaching, a bit of their personality, and then really selling the elective. This has been kind of a new initiative that the faculty have now chosen to go ahead with. So that will be quite interesting as well. So that makes it a bit more exciting. It might make the bidding a bit more competitive, but actually it really puts it in kind of your hands. It does take away from it being a first come, first serve, which is what happens sometimes at other business schools and did used to happen here historically. So we think it's the fairest way of doing it. And then if there are oversubscribed electives, it's purely based on the number of points that you've allocated as to whether you then get in or not.
Great, thank you. And staying with you, Rachel, if you don't mind, another question around the options that are available in the summer. So in the session that I ran this morning, we did an overview of the program with more electives or an internship or the strategic consulting project. Do you have and I'm putting you on the spot here a little bit, from the top of your head, do you have some data around the percentage of the class that take each one of those 3 options for us, please?
Yeah, so I'd say generally the electives are the more popular option. We have about 1/3 of students that go off and do internships, and they are independently sourced. So it's up to students to go out and find an internship. It might be one that the careers team have advertised through Oscar, the system that they use for advertising jobs and internships. But it does need to meet our criteria, which we can send you more specifics, but it has to run for 6 weeks. It has to be of a set level, run within the dates that fit within our term time, etc. So about 1/3 of the students go off, do their internships, and then you write a reflective piece about what you've learned and how that links in with your MBA learnings. We have a very small set of students that do a strategic consulting project. We normally try and kind of handpick 5 or 6 really good projects, and that has 3 to 5 students on each of them. So obviously you can see that's a much smaller percentage where available. You can apply either as part of a team already if you know that you work really well with these people, or you can apply individually to a project, and then we'll put you into a group if there are enough people interested in that. And then the majority, obviously, of the students then go off and do electives in the summer. And they're taught slightly different than term time because they're done in a much more condensed version. So they'll run over the course of a week or over 2 weeks. And then you can pick them within 3-week blocks over the summer period.
Great, thank you very much. Frankie, back to you. If you don't mind, there seems to be a fairly common theme that's coming through. People are asking that if they apply for the program, say in stage 2, is it okay for them to provide the scholarship essays for the scholarship they're aiming for at a later date, as long as it's before the stage 3 deadline? Or would you recommend that everything is included at once in that initial application?
Good question. So when you go through your MBA application, you'll get to the funding section of the application. It's clear on the instructions there that you have to apply for scholarships at the same time as your MBA application. You can't submit your MBA application and apply later for a scholarship. We have to have it all in one go. So if you're applying for stage 2, then you need to be ready to complete your MBA application and your scholarship applications within that. So it's pretty clear cut there. I hope that helps.
Thanks, Frankie. Yeah. So Charlene, back to you if you don't mind. We had a question around the answers on the application form and the post-MBA goals, the career goals section. The question is there a word count, first of all? And secondly, what kind of level of detail would you like people to go into?
So there isn't a word count. Obviously, just be mindful that you don't want to produce pages upon pages of post MBA career aspirations, but it's good to have, I guess, quite a level of detail. We want to know, we want to find out what it is that you want to do, and we understand though that for some people they're not really sure. But it's always good to have an idea. So I think if you're looking to maybe go into social entrepreneurship or kind of looking at starting your own business, then to have your plan doesn't have to be a full-on plan drawn out that this is what I'm going to do, but at least have some guidance for us that you have researched what it is that you want to do, the kind of area that you want to go in. The questions in the application are kind of sections, so that will help when it comes to kind of breaking down the different kind of sections of what you want to look at, whether it's location or kind of sector, anything that you've done prior to kind of looking to certain roles, anything that you've done to really reach out and kind of find what it is that kind of certain companies or certain kind of sectors are looking for in a type of person. So it's the kind of knowledge that we want to know what you have done in order to kind of prep for this. As we've said quite a bit throughout the day, I think that it is a one-year program and it goes by pretty quickly. Before you know it, you're in, and then you're graduating. So it is a good idea to have a good plan and let us see that plan. However, we also know that many students will come onto the program and that plan within 3-4 weeks is out the window. You meet up with people, there's a lot of networking involved, and you decide that you may want to do something else. And we're not saying that's not a bad thing, that does happen, it happens a lot. But at least it is good to have an idea and be as detailed as you can. I personally think from my position in admissions, in the committee, we do read and we do want to understand how much you are aware of whether or not you have transferable skills into another sector, or kind of even if it's just progressing throughout your current career, how you intend and what you will learn from the MBA and take forward into these kind of higher roles, higher positions.
Great, thank you, Char. And then one more just for you before we move back to Frankie for the next one. It's a fairly simple one, I think. The FAQs page talks about a deposit that is required to secure your place if you've been made an offer. Can you tell the audience and the person specifically with the question what that amount is for this coming year, please?
Absolutely. So for this year, as it stands, the deposit will be £8,900. You will receive, if you receive an offer, you will receive your offer letter and an invoice, and the deposit is usually due within 30 days of receiving your offer. But we will try and be flexible. We do understand that some people might be sponsored, government sponsored, company sponsored, funds are coming from different areas. So we do try and be flexible with a few extra days or so extension on that. But generally it is 30 days from when you receive the offer. But that's £8,900.
Great, thank you. Frankie, back to you. It's a two-part question probably. So I'll just send you this one question for now, but it is in two parts. Part A asks around the criteria that is used when considering people for the scholarships that are not named. So the ones that they're automatically considered for, I guess, if they're admitted onto the program. So that's part one, what criteria are used to decide who gets some funding. And part two, which has come up a couple of times in the Q&A, are you able to share kind of the average amount that a scholar might receive? And we can use historical data if we have it, versus what we expect for this year, if that's easier to do, please.
Sure. So the first part then, automatic consideration. So you'll probably see a lot of our scholarships are automatic consideration. They vary from scheme to scheme because a lot of it has to do with kind of where you're from or where you currently live. And so as long as you fill that criteria, then you're already on our list as an eligible candidate. In terms of selecting from that list, we mainly look at academic excellence and merit. So really, when you're thinking about your application, your program application, really ensure that you're putting across your the best application you can, so making sure that it's clear that you've got great academic skills that you've previously obtained. Make sure you've got a great GMAT or GRE score, highlight any kind of university prizes or awards that you've had. So that's kind of one of the key areas that we do look for automatic consideration. There are other areas, so it's kind of what you want to do going forward post MBA, kind of what you've done in your work experience. We look at a range of factors, and it does vary from scheme to scheme, so I can't give you kind of a definite answer, but once you look at the scholarship web pages and you look at those that are automatic consideration, you can see kind of the selection criteria that the scholarship committee uses, and it will be clear kind of whether it's a focus on leadership or whether it's a focus on something else. So really do highlight those attributes that you have in your MBA program application, and don't worry too much about if you've not got the greatest GMAT or GRE score, that plays one part. And I know I get a lot of questions every year about, does that score make a difference? It's one of the many things that mounts up when we look at your application for scholarships. So do the best you can, but it's not the deciding factor in many cases. So I hope that helps with the automatic consideration. In terms of percentage, about a third of the MBA class get a scholarship, and that includes all of our scholarships and university and college scholarships. In terms of average amounts, so it varies. In previous years, it's been kind of around 20 to 25,000. This year, we're probably looking at the same, potentially maybe slightly higher. It's kind of hard to put a set figure on everything because it does move around a lot. And obviously, most people obviously want a full scholarship, but they are extremely competitive. And I would say, if you're reliant on a full scholarship, absolutely do apply. And, there's always the possibility, but do think about your other funding options because we don't have, unfortunately, we can't afford to, or we don't have the scholarships available to give everyone a full scholarship. So do kind of look at other funding options available. So whether that's external funders, loans, family savings, whatever you can do have a backup plan for whatever scholarship you're applying for. Was that everything in the question, Liam?
It was. I'm sorry for asking you a multi-part question, Frankie. It won't happen again.
Okay.
Rachel, back to you if you don't mind. The question has come in from one of the audience asking about the Creative Destruction Lab, CDL. How do you work with the CDL? Is that an elective or something outside of the curriculum, please?
Right, so great question. CDL is but one of multiple co-curricular activities that are available to MBA students at the university. So as Liam said, CDL is the Creative Destruction Lab. It's an amazing opportunity for students to get involved in, but it is not part of the 4-credit course. So it is in addition to your full-time MBA. A number of students do get onto it. It's quite a small number. I think it's around 20-ish. But you can be fully involved in that as well as your MBA. There is the possibility. You just need to be careful with your time. It's kind of one of these things along with the various labs that are available, the Asset Management Masterclass, the Impact Lab, so many co-curricular opportunities for students that it can be somewhat overwhelming, but CDL is one of them. But yes, it's not for credit. It is an addition. It won't be able to count towards your program. So it doesn't get you out of doing any of your electives, I'm afraid.
Thank you, Rach. Shah, back to you for a question, if you don't mind. I'm guessing, without giving all of the trade secrets away, the question is around the interview process. And it just says, it would be really great to hear what the interview process is like. And they're apologizing that it might already be on the website, but could you shed a bit of light maybe on the process? Is it virtual? Is it in person? How long will it take? Who the interviewer might be? Just a little bit of detail around that, please.
Absolutely. So the interview itself takes around 30 minutes, whereas in the past we've had a lot of in-person interviews, whether that be maybe in your home country or here in Oxford. We run interview days. However, obviously due to COVID, all of that had to go back to kind of virtual interviewing. And at the moment, we are still working virtually on the interviews, but do look out, as some of us will be traveling over the course of the year, so we may be conducting interviews in a city kind of near you. Some of my colleagues in well, in stage 1, we're currently in the interview process as we speak, actually went out and they interviewed in Nigeria. So look out for that. That will be happening, but in general, you know, it is virtual at the moment. Now, these interviews, well, should I say, people conducting the interviews will be industry advisors. So for those of you that attended the alumni panel when they spoke about the interviewing, you know, what some of the students were mentioning was our industry advisors that they interviewed with. However, you will also be interviewed by members of the admissions committee and the recruitment and admissions team. So there's a group of us that you will meet, and the interviews themselves, I think, without giving trade secrets, I think it's good to be prepared. I personally always think, you know, make sure you know what you've put on your CV as well. That's always a good start. You know, we do look at your CV, we do look at your entire application before we meet. So it's good to know what you've actually put in there. But it's also a good opportunity as well. You know, we do leave a bit of time for any kind of questions that you may have about Oxford. Obviously, an interview is not always, it's not just about finding out if you're a good fit for us, but if we're a good fit for you as well. So, you know, so think about those type of questions that you might want to answer towards the end. But, you know, we try to have a more, I think, relaxed feel. Some of us do. We think we get more from each other, you know, in that environment. But they, you know, they will vary. You will meet with people that do have a lot of kind of industry experience, or, like I say, you'll be interviewed by members of the admissions committee. But 30 minutes, prepare, and I'm sure everyone will do absolutely fine.
Thank you, Shah. I'm going to stick with you for a couple of what will hopefully be fairly quick questions. For the GRE or the GMAT, how close to the application do you recommend to take the exam, and how old can a GMAT or GRE score be for us to accept it?
Okay, so I would probably, a lot of people do decide to take the GMAT or GRE thinking they will do amazingly well and leave it right till the end, and then they do the test and it's not the score that they were hoping for. I've spoken to a lot of candidates, and you know, they always recommend that I advise students to make sure they kind of do a little bit of prep before they take the test. So I personally think it's wise to kind of have a bit of time between sitting the exam and the deadline, or, you know, if you're thinking of applying early, at least know that if you're not happy, there's going to be another deadline at a later date, which you can also apply for, so that it gives you time to apply again. In terms of the length, they have to be within 5 years. So also I would also remember that when you sit the test, you are asked to, I think they give you 5 schools that you can recommend and share your school with. So please make sure, obviously, one of them is ours, and then we will be able to access that online. At the time of application, you will be asked to put your score in and maybe your test taker copy, but we will also need to see the official one. So please make sure to add us as a school so that we can view that online. Did I answer all of that?
You did, yeah. It was just a one-part question, Charles, but you got it. Thank you.
Yeah.
The other question that I had for you, let me make sure that I've got it here. Will this round in October, we have an application deadline on Wednesday, as people I think know, and the round in January be equally competitive, or is there an advantage to applying now besides being in line for scholarships maybe a little bit earlier?
Okay, so as I think Liam mentioned in his previous session, there's no right or wrong stage to apply in. Obviously, the class will start to get more full as we go along, but in terms of stage 2 or stage 3, you know, I can say, and I will let people know, that stage 3 is usually our largest stage. So we do receive more applications in that round. So some people would look at that and say, well, actually, okay, it will be more competitive. But I think we review each round, you know, as it comes, really. And no matter how many applications, everyone is still looked at equally. Everyone is looked at their application on an individual basis. And if we feel that, you know, you could be a good fit, then we'll interview you. And then, you know, if after your interview, you know, you're still a good fit for the school, then we will make you an offer. So in terms of stage 2 or 3, I don't think it really matters, as long as you apply by stage 3 if you are interested in certain scholarships.
Great, thank you. So for the whole panel, there's a question that's coming up in a few minutes. I'm going to give you a heads up now. The question that's been sent through is, what is the biggest mistake you've seen? But obviously everyone works in slightly different areas. So don't answer it just yet, but just in the back of your minds. Charlene, if you can think about the biggest mistake you've seen in an application. Rachel, if you can think about the biggest mistake you've seen, maybe, or the most common mistake that new students make when they arrive. Frankie, if you can think about maybe mistakes in scholarship applications, and I'll come back to you for your answer in a moment. I just wanted to give you a bit of time to think about that. Charlene's already ready. We'll come back to you in a moment, Char, because I do have a question for Rachel that's going to ask her to multitask. So while she thinks of the future answer, she needs to answer this one as well. Rachel, do you mind talking about the application process for both the finance lab and the impact lab, and are they the same? How do you apply? When do you do that? Can you shed some light on that for us, please?
Yeah, so once you've paid your deposit and you've mostly finished dealing with Charlene and Liam and their team, you are put onto our pre-arrival site. It's called the MBA portal. That happens in the June before you start in the September. On that pre-arrival site, you've got all of the co-curricular information you could possibly wish for. There's tasks that you need to do before you arrive, surveys that we've asked you to fill in. It's also got loads of information about your year, and more is put on throughout the summer. And in addition to that, we then start newsletters 10 weeks before induction starts, and that counts down and gets you excited, shows you the different leadership positions you can apply for, and more than you could possibly want to know at that stage. But also, each of our co-curricular areas, such as Finance Lab and Impact Lab, have their own areas within this MBA portal. So they put all of their information there to give you a really good idea of what's available for them and what co-curricular activities you can get involved in. Finance Lab is generally an early access lab. They normally close their applications on the 30th of June. So they are an early application one. If you're leaving it later onto maybe the 3rd or 4th round, then you might be slower paying your deposit. You might then be slower being added to the pre-arrival site, at which stage you may have missed the opportunity to attend Finance Lab. That is the only lab that is done so early. It's because there is a significant amount of prep work that they expect you to do before you land here in the middle of September. Impact Lab, the information again will all be on that online portal, and you can go through our preparation. You'll be able to see the deadline, which is normally into September, early October time instead. So you've got a bit of time to look through it, ask any questions. There's normally some frequently asked questions on there as well for you. And then that's done through the centres. They'll be able to set it up for you. I can't speak to exactly what they're looking for because they are run more through the centres than through my team on the programmes. But there's so much information on the portal, and it's only in the last couple of years that we've started using a new system, and it's got so much better than what we previously offered. So hopefully that will really help to contribute, help you understand exactly what you're looking forward to and what you're going to be applying for.
Perfect. Thank you. Really, really helpful, Rachel. Great. Okay, so we'll go back to the biggest mistake question. And I think Char was ready first. So we'll do it in this order. Charlene, you first. Maybe we'll come to you, Frankie, next, and then Rachel will finish on the most common mistake that new students make on the program. So Char, the floor is yours. What do you think the biggest mistake is in applications?
Okay, so I think I was way too eager there. However, you know, there's a couple that I can suggest, but that I guess the minute you asked me the question, Liam, the first thing that come to my mind was, okay, so I know that everyone will apply to different schools, but please be mindful when you're submitting your application which school you are actually applying to. Okay, so what we obviously don't want to read is an essay question that talks about how LBS is your top choice and you're very happy and you're very excited to join them. So just kind of really think, you know, when you're submitting an essay, or even when you're talking, some of the schools may have online assessment videos. So really just kind of think about who you are currently applying to, and what it is that you're wanting to say. We do see this, and you'll be surprised how many times we may see it. So I think for me that's a pretty big thing for me.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Charlene. Frankie, over to you.
Yes, thank you. Actually, mine's on a similar theme to Charlene's, actually. Do you think, don't just reiterate essays across multiple scholarships and of course across multiple schools. So I have seen a number of scholarship essays where it refers to a different scholarship, even though the title at the top of the page has changed, because it's clear to us that, you're not actually thinking about why you want this particular scholarship, and you haven't thought about how you are meeting the criteria. So it's a very common mistake, and I appreciate that, a lot of students have a lot of essays they need to write, but do really tailor your scholarship essay, especially if you're really in need of funding, because it's really important, and the scholarship committee will notice it. They're very eagle-eyed, and so they will pick this up, and they will think, actually, you may want this scholarship, but you've not actually thought about why you should have it beyond above and beyond other applicants. Rachel?
Right, so as Charlene said, I've actually got a couple of things as well. I'd say the biggest thing on day 1, day 2 of induction, the biggest thing that we face is a huge amount of imposter syndrome, with easily 50% of the class suddenly going, I don't think I should be here, look at all these really impressive people. Don't think that. The recruitment and admissions team are amazing, and you will not have made it into the school if you don't deserve to be in the school. There are so many people that apply and so many people that didn't get a place, so you are deserving of that place. You don't just let any old person into Oxford, you've made it there. So my first bit of advice would say, don't worry, you are meant to be there, and you're going to prove that to yourself and to us and your family and friends over the course of the year. My second bit of advice would be, don't over sign yourself up for things. It's a 1-year course, and MBA is traditionally 2 years. We're a 1 year only, so it is really time intensive. You're in lectures, you're in classes, you're working, you're preparing for those lectures and classes for a lot of the time. There are so many co-curricular activities. You do have time to be doing some things. You have time to be involved in your college, but don't sign up to everything that's available for you, because you're going to overstretch yourself, and that's not going to give you the best experience of Oxford or the MBA programme either.
Perfect, thank you. Oh, Shah has raised her hand. Charlene's not done, guys. She's got more to say.
I'm sorry. I just wanted to jump on the back of what Rachel said, really, because a lot of people have asked me before joining, what's the best thing I can do before coming? And I think, so with what Rachel said, I think do your research. Do your research about Oxford. Don't let it get to the point where you've been offered a place and then you come to me and say, what is the college? I don't know what this is. So, really do your research. Think about the different things that you might be interested in. As Rachel said, it's 1 year, it's intense. You literally hit the ground running as soon as you come to Oxford. So to have an idea of the kind of the networking opportunities or the social side of things that you might want to be a part of, please, just try and do a bit of that research before, whether that's kind of by yourself or kind of really reconnecting with some of our alumni. And if you did want to connect to our alumni, for those of you that weren't on the alumni panel, they suggested to reach out to them on LinkedIn. If you do want to connect with them, obviously type something in as they suggested. A lot of the time they get so many prospective candidates reach out to them, they don't know who they are, so they don't always kind of accept it. So write a short message, let them know what you're interested in and kind of how they can help. Or alternatively, reach out to the recruitment and admissions team, and if there's somebody that we personally can connect you with, then we will. That's all very helpful information prior to coming, because it is extremely intense, and we want you to make the most of your time there. And that's not just the kind of curriculum, so the academic side, but that's also the kind of network opportunities and the social side of Oxford as well. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you, Charlene. A couple of hopefully fairly quick questions, and I'm going to end in about 10 minutes, guys, with one. I'll give you some advance warning on that one too. For now, Frankie, back to you if you don't mind. Could you explain a bit more about whether there is an option if people aren't successful with a scholarship? Do we have any formal connections or ties or endorsements with a third-party loan provider, or is that really on the individual student to find those loan provisions for themselves?
Oh, yeah, good question. So we do on our website have a page called Loans and External Funding, which I suggest you look at as part of your kind of funding research, where we highlight some loan providers that we know students have worked with in the past. We are not affiliated with them, so I can't, you know, and I'm not recommending them at all. They're just ones that we know of. There are so many more, so it's not a definitive list. We do expect applicants to do their own research and see what is available to them. Some of those loan providers we know have offered you know, up to around about 80% of the course fees, but it is really dependent on the individual, and they all have different processes. So you really need to carefully look at those providers to see kind of whether you fit whatever criteria they're looking for. You might want to investigate your own country and whether they've got any educational loans or any educational scholarships. Again, it's really up to you to kind of see what's available to you. There is a lot of funding out there. You just have to do quite a bit of research to find it. The university as well, which we link to on our website, has a list of kind of charities that they have known in the past to provide funding. Again, they all have their own eligibility and selection criteria, so you'd need to have a look at those. And really, I would just suggest doing as much research as possible to have backup plans if you're not successful getting a scholarship, because, you know, even if you do get a scholarship from us at SBS, it may not be enough to cover your entire course fees, and actually you might need multiple loans or other funding to enable you to come here. So I really would look at what we've put as a starter on our website and then go from there.
Thank you, Frankie. And just a quick follow-up question around a similar theme. If people are planning their finances and thinking about tuition plus the living expenses, are we able to share a typical annual living expense amount that they might need to think about when thinking about coming to the school?
Yeah, so the university publishes every year kind of a guide with lower and upper amounts of what a typical, and I say the single student living in Oxford, as in it doesn't account for kind of families, if you're bringing families or other kind of living expenses that you might expect. It ranges depending on kind of what accommodation you have and kind of what your outgoings are. There's a link to that on our website, so I suggest looking at that. Typically at the moment it's a kind of around £17,000, and scholarships that are offered that do provide living expenses are normally offer around £16,000 or £17,000 per year. Some people might say that's not enough, so you know, it really is depending on how you live in the next year, what accommodation you have, kind of what your outgoings are. The university's page is a guidance only, so you really need to kind of think about what it is that you are going to be spending, you know, on your living expenses.
Great, thank you very much. Charlene, a couple of quick questions for you around the application process. The first one, and forgive me in advance for a two-part question. I said I wouldn't do this again, but here we are, proving myself to be a hypocrite once more. First part, how many times can I apply within the same year? If I apply in round 2 and get rejected, can I reapply in round 3? That's part 1. And secondly, how long does the whole application last? So from submitting the application to then confirming the offer, can you shed some light on that process, or the length of that process, please?
Yeah, okay, so unfortunately, if you do decide to apply in round 2 and we're unsuccessful, then you can't apply again in one of the next rounds. You will have to wait until the following year. So you can only apply once within one admission cycle, within one intake. That's that first question. The second question, usually depending on what stage, from the time of kind of if you submit around the deadline to the point where you receive an offer, it's usually around 2 months. But there's obviously stage 3, when we know that we receive, I guess, the majority of our applications, it might stretch into kind of 2.5 months because of the volume of applications that we receive. So from the minute you submit, it's usually around 2 to 2.5 months before receiving the offer. But I think our deadlines are structured where you can see when the deadlines are, when the interview decisions will be released if you're successful, and then when the final outcome of that is. So I think that's all on our website, but happy to be more specific. If you reach out to the admissions team, we can send you those deadlines if need be.
Thank you, Charlene. And so I'll give you, and for the whole panel here, this is the warning that I promised for what will probably be the final question. So there's one more question I'm going to ask Charlene before this, but the question that I'd like to think about and have an answer to, if you don't mind, is if you could each describe the culture of the school in just a few words, what would you say? So have a think about that if you can. And in the meantime, Char, we've had a question from somebody who is a bit concerned that maybe age is a barrier. And the question is a slightly older age, and I think this person has mentioned they're around 35 years old, for example. Is that something that has to be justified in an application in the same way that maybe a low GPA has to be justified as well?
Yes and no. I mean, I think we will be able to see from your application the reasons of why you're wanting to kind of do an MBA now. We do see a kind of varied range of age, and I think one of our kind of elder students, one of the oldest students that I'm aware of, I think was 45 on the MBA. That's right, Rachel, right? So 45. So, we don't discriminate against age at all. But it's the same with every application. It's good to know why you want to do the MBA and how it's going to help you. Whether that's, with 2 years experience or 10 years experience. Obviously, the more mature student, we might look at it and think, okay, why would this person not want to do an executive MBA? Obviously, you can look and you think with people more around kind of where you are in your career, with the networking opportunities, that might be something you want to look at. But then we do get a lot of candidates that say, well, actually, I don't want to do a part-time. I'm, looking to do something within 1 year, and I'm fine with the class, kind of the average age being 28. That's fine by me. It's just you being aware also that the people that you may be surrounded with may not have as much experience, but as I said, the kind of average age, you're looking 28, 29. I don't think being 35 is a big issue at all. But it's like with any application, just let us know why you want to do it. Age doesn't come into it.
I don't want to be too glib about this, folks. Some of us would love to be 35 again. That's all I'll say. Okay, so let's go to the question that we kind of gave you a bit of a warning to. Charlene, let's give you a bit of a break to begin with. Rachel, we haven't heard from you for a few minutes, and thank you. I've noticed you've been working diligently in the background to type some answers to the questions in the Q&A. So I appreciate that. But if you don't mind, let's start with you on the few words around the culture of the school, if you're happy to share, please.
Yeah, absolutely. So I feel like this is the kind of thing that when we're interviewing staff, one of the questions that people always ask is, what do you like most about the school? And I think this links in with that nicely. So in a few words, I've already used more of my few words, haven't I? I'd say it's supportive. I think that's from staff and students. Collaborative, which is slightly annoying because it's one of our values. So I feel like I'm a cliche saying it, but I really do feel that the staff, the students, the faculty, everyone that works here, from the dean to the night porters, are all supporting each other. They're all working together to make sure that everyone has the best experience at the school. And I think it's probably the most supportive workplace that I've worked in, and the most exciting. So I'll go supportive, collaborative, and exciting.
Perfect. Thank you. Frankie, let's go to you next, if you don't mind.
Sure. Oh, is there a question?
Oh, I'm sorry. So in just a few words, what would you say the culture of the school is, please?
Oh, sorry.
That's okay.
I thought that was just to Rachel. Yeah. I've probably continued from Rachel. I mean, I obviously deal with the scholars a lot, and I deal with the scholars whilst they're in course. And it's a fantastic opportunity to see the scholars, and some of the communities, the scholars that I see, they have such a lovely sense of community, and they really bond together. And I feel like there's always a culture with them in particular of friendship, of exploring, you know, exploring themselves, exploring the school, exploring kind of learning from each other. And I really think what I see from the scholars in particular is just their love to learn. They don't want to stay static. They want to learn anything and everything, and they just want to experience life. So I really feel like with the scholars in particular, they really just they're just so excited to be a part of the school and the class, and I think it's very infectious as well. They make everyone around them feel the same way, and they're just so amazing. So I think that's one of the main things.
Thank you very much. And then Charlene, over to you for probably the final answer of the session. Make it the best answer you've ever given.
Well, I'm trying, but that's the thing with going last, is that, you know, we've all experienced the school, and we all pretty much think the same. And I think my top one is the community. Actually, to be able to meet the different cohorts that come in every year, and what they bring. They are just some of the most amazing people that I've ever had the pleasure to meet, and to kind of work with in a way, to help them from the point of their application to then see them walk into the school in September is pretty amazing thing. And then over the course of the year, the community spirit that we as staff kind of also bring to the school, I think really helps the kind of student community kind of really, again, using those words, kind of embed themselves in the community, because it's really, really true. So for me, that's a really big thing. The community is big. It's very collaborative. Again, a word that we've already heard, you know, over the course of the years, seeing and hearing from students that may have struggled in certain areas, where, you know, they've told me that it's, you know, if it wasn't for other students in their cohort, they wouldn't have got through one of the courses. So that, to me, again, it still comes down to that kind of community, and to the type of students that we have at Oxford. And I think sometimes you might not necessarily get that if you've got you know, a cohort that's only kind of a couple of, you know, from a couple of sectors. The fact that everyone, because it's so diverse in every way possible, I think that really helps the community. So that's for me, that's my biggest one. And when I said I've been here a while, I've been here almost 20 years, and that's one of the reasons that I stay here, is because of the community and the people that I have the pleasure of meeting.
Amazing. Thank you everyone so much for all of your answers, and to the audience, I'm very sorry that we weren't able to get to all of your questions. I can see Rachel still furiously typing in the background, trying to get one more answer sent through before I close the session down. But we have sadly reached the end of the Q&A. So Charlene, Frankie, Rachel, thank you so much for your time and for your thoughtful answers. To the audience out there, thank you for your attention and your participation. And not just in this session, but for the whole open day that we've put together for you today. We hope you found it useful. We hope you've piqued your interest a little bit more than hopefully it's already been piqued. If you have any outstanding questions that we couldn't get to, please get in touch. We'd love to speak to you, and we'd love to hear from you. And we hope to see some very strong and well thought out applications come through either next week, if you're aiming for stage 2, or over the next few weeks, if you get into stages 3 and 4 for next year. So that's it from us. Guys, thank you very much for everything. We hope to hear from you very soon, and good luck for your applications. Bye for now.
Thank you. Bye-bye.